down to business.
When he drinks, he thinks.
That's the nectar of the gods, baby.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the #1 liquid-fueled, liquid lubricated show on the interwebs. This is the Whiskey Musings Broadcast. And I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm not feeling 100%. I picked up what Mrs. Whiskey had earlier or late last week, early this week, and so yeah, I'm not feeling the greatest. So tonight's drink is actually more of a medicinal drink in nature. It is a hot toddy. I've got it in the hot coffee cup here. You can see the liquid there. Now, hot toddies can be made in a variety of ways. I personally like to do mine in a hot tea. It can be made with just hot water, but I like to steep some normal, like regular tea in it. Maybe for an example, say a orange, like the tea that you would normally get at, say, a Chinese restaurant. Or just a standard black tea, not avoiding the flavored stuff for the most part. Okay. Avoiding the flavored stuff. Cause I'm not really much of a flavored tea drinker, anyway, but, avoiding the flavored stuff. And then what I do is I vary depending upon my mood. So sometimes I use cinnamon, sometimes I'll use peppermint, as a flavor. And then of course, always put in a good dollop of honey, in there, whether it's thank you, 3 Chevy orange Pico. Thank you very much. I couldn't think of the second term. But anyway, and then tonight, I mean, most of the time what you'll do is you'll put like a whiskey in there, just a standard straight whiskey, not a flavored whiskey. But this is one of the few times that I actually use a flavored whiskey. And I put in some Fireball tonight because I don't have a cinnamon stick. So I'm using the Fireball for the cinnamon piece out of it as well. So tonight is tea, Fireball whiskey, and a dollop of honey in the cup. So we're going to see how things go. I know Wednesday I was feeling it after the show, and that was actually really where things kind of kicked in with the illness. So I'm fighting it. I am definitely fighting it, but I just want to let you guys know that's why I'm drinking the medicinal hot drink tonight instead of my typical straight whiskey. But it's good stuff. Good stuff. So I am going to be doing that. All right. So, earlier this week, actually we'll say earlier today, I had an encounter with the best way to really describe it is a complete libtard. On Twitter, and I love Twitter. I do love Twitter. I'll tell you why. I love Twitter because of the fact that it's, excuse me. I love Twitter because of the fact that I get to, rile up some of the lefties over there with truth and facts and everything else. And I have fun, with that. But the fact of the matter is that sometimes you run across somebody that is just incredibly brainwashed and incredibly so much into the Trump derangement syndrome, et cetera, that they just don't seem to want to actually learn at all. And all they're interested in is name calling and, obviously calling you racist and all kinds of different, names. And the first thing, of course, that this individual did is he started saying that I was one of those types of people who worshiped at the orange god's feet, which, as you all know here on this show, I definitely am not worshiping Trump. Like I've said multiple times, I think he was a good president. He was definitely the best pick out of the two choices that we did have when he became president. And I think that he deserves another shot at it to try and prove what's going on. Try and prove out that he actually can be listed as one of the upper level good presidents, et cetera, et cetera. Unfortunately, a lot of people on Twitter, at least a lot of the lefty loons on Twitter, seem to believe that if you don't agree with their agenda, you're obviously a, orange man sycophant. And, and of course, immediately go to like calling you names and everything else. So I tried to educate this individual, first of all, that I wasn't a Trump sycophant, and also that, my way was the correct way. And unfortunately, and I'm calling him a he because that was the photo that was in, and he actually had it in his bio. He, him, his, I think were the three. And, he actually had it in his bio. And so he just kept coming at me over and over and over again, not even really addressing my points per se. Some of the times, a couple of the responses he did say, but pretty soon I just got to the point where I was just like, okay, that's it. I've given you a chance. I've entertained you for, a short period of time, and I'm pretty much done. And so I implemented the real James Woods. Anybody who follows James Woods is actually, he's an incredible actor. And he is also a conservative as well, which is kind of odd coming from Hollywood. But there are a few of them. But James Woods does this thing where he calls it an Instablock, and he uses the hashtag Instablock. And I don't use that very often. I don't necessarily like blocking people just because of the fact that, all voices should be heard. And if you're going to come at me in a intelligent conversational fashion, you can see, if you go to Twitter, you can see some of my interactions with people, especially the ones that are fairly intelligent, and are at least open to a active and constructive dialogue. I entertain those things. I am more than willing to speak to just about anybody, except for those who are going to just essentially break the conversation down into a tirade of name calling, bad mouthing, bashing, not stating facts, not showing any evidence. And then at that point, it's done. It's done. So I do the hashtag Instablock, and I went ahead and blocked them. Which again is not something that I necessarily care to do. But occasionally these people are basically kind of like Ron White. You get to a point where you just can't fix stupid. And that person falls into that category. So that was my entertainment this morning, while I was, trying to figure out what it was that I was going to talk about tonight. Speaking of which, for tonight, I have a few things. I have obviously the announcement by Joe Biden that he is not going to go to the Ohio crash site, which I thought was, well, I mean, okay, so I'll tell you when I get there. I also have a couple of other things dealing with the economy again. There were some revised numbers that have come out, and let's just say they don't look good for Joe. And then there's also a very interesting and a very interesting, and one that I have to admit I had to go and sort of dig into a question for whiskey. And so I'm really excited actually to get to that point, because I kind of want to talk about it a little bit, because you've heard the term being passed around in all kinds of stuff. So yeah, it's an interesting question. It's a thought-provoking question. It was submitted by Outlaw Dogs over on Rumble, and I do appreciate that. That was great. And hopefully I'll be able to answer her question when I get to that point. But first things first, we have to discuss the Institute on the Constitution. The Institute on the Constitution was established in 2004 as a 501c3 nonprofit with one singular mission: to restore the constitutional republic through grassroots education. All courses and materials are developed using primary source documents and taught from the American view of law and government as defined in the Declaration of Independence in the following three key points. 1, there is God. 2, our rights come from him. And 3, the purpose of civil government is to secure and protect our God-given rights. The IOTC offers the opportunity to educate yourself on our most precious founding document, the Constitution of the United States. They also provide tools to educate your community and get involved with local government. Start by taking their free U.S. Constitution course and go from there. Use my affiliate link, iotc.whiskeymusings.online, to sign up. And while you are there, take a moment to look through their other course material and information. My affiliate link, once again, is iotc.whiskeymusings.online to get great content to learn about our historical founding and support the show in the process. That's iotc.whiskeymusings.online. Or if you just want to purchase this fabulous Saddleback leather-bound U.S. Constitution and support the show, go to constitution.whiskeymusings.online. This is a great keepsake. It's about 1/8 of an inch of Saddleback leather. The pages on the inside are water resistant. And check out that binding. It is stitched all the way through the leather and the pages. It is absolutely awesome. The manufacturer, which is the Saddleback Leather Company, they have a 100-year guarantee against defects in materials and workmanship. If this ever falls apart, you can send it back to them and they will either fix it or replace it for free in the 100 years. This is a fabulous keepsake. I know of at least one young man who has gotten this prior to last Christmas and is using it for his merit badges in the Boy Scouts. And I am absolutely proud to have been able to bring this to him. And this is, by the way, buddy tested and buddy approved for the show. So there are rounded pages. Buddy's hitting me with all of this stuff. There are rounded pages on the ends, so it's not like ones that would snag or anything. And it's just a fabulous keepsake. You'll be passing this down for generations to come. And, you support your favorite whiskey drinking host in doing so. All right. Thank you to the Institute on the Constitution for allowing me to be an affiliate. And so go check them out today, please. Please check them out. All right. Next up is, of course, on this day in American history. And, of course, on this day in American history, we read from the American Patriots Almanac, the book written by William J. Bennett and John T.E. Cribb. They put together this fabulous thick book of a daily diatribe of all kinds of U.S. facts and history. And, of course, I read it every Saturday on the show. And tonight, for February 25th, we have, why is the flag called Old Glory? A sea captain from Salem, Massachusetts, named William Driver, first called the U.S. flag Old Glory. In 1824, when Driver turned 21, his mother and several young ladies sewed a large American flag for his merchant ship. The captain was delighted with the birthday gift. "I name thee Old Glory," he declared when he saw it unfolding on the breeze. In the 1820s and 30s, he flew it on his ship during his sea voyages. In 1837, Driver left the sea and moved to Nashville, Tennessee, taking his precious flag with him. On Washington's birthday, the 4th of July, and St. Patrick's Day, which happened to be Driver's birthday, he proudly hung Old Glory from a rope stretched across his street. With the coming of the Civil War, Driver grew worried that the Confederates might seize his flag, so he hid it by sewing it inside a bed comforter. The war divided the Driver family, as it did so many others. Captain Driver was a staunch Union man, but his two sons fought for the Confederacy, and one was killed at the Battle of Perryville, Tennessee. On February 25th, 1862, Nashville became the first Southern state capital to fall to Union troops. When the soldiers entered the city, Driver ripped open the comforter's seams, carried Old Glory to the Capitol building, climbed its tower, and raised his beloved banner. After hearing the story, Americans adopted the nickname Old Glory for the U.S. flag. Today, Driver's original Old Glory resides at the Smithsonian Institute in Washington, D.C., where it has been carefully preserved. And that is today's On This Day in American History. You know, I have to admit, I never really knew the story of where the name Old Glory came from. So that was news to me. I have a TIL for today. Today I learned where the term Old Glory came from in terms of that. Okay. So, let's hang on just a second. I got to get my throat back. Wow. Sorry. Oh, this might be a tough one, folks. Okay. So, obviously the Ohio train derailment has been a big problem for the Biden administration, especially those like Joe Biden and Pete Buttigieg. They seem to refuse the idea of actually going to the site and everything else. It took Trump to go ahead and kick off the help to send not only like the EPA, but FEMA, and to actually get Pete Buttigieg to acknowledge the fact that there was actually an accident. Because if you recall, when it happened, let's see, what was he doing? Oh, he was at some sort of a conference and yelling at people for not having enough diversity in construction. But anyway, so he occasionally, I guess the other day, Biden was asked by a presser, a journalist. I don't know if I'd necessarily call them journalists per se. But I just want to say, I mean, because they don't do actual journalism anymore. They do more of a journalisming, as Ben Shapiro would say. But the fact of the matter is that he was asked if he was going to go to the site. And let me go ahead and show you this. Oh, whoops, wrong window. Hang on. This happens sometimes when I'm not paying attention. Okay, so Biden declines to visit the Ohio toxic wreck train site and orders door-to-door checks instead. So he has ordered federal officials to do door-to-door checks on families in East Palestine, Ohio, but said he has no immediate plans to visit the village where the train derailed 3 weeks ago, spilling the toxic chemicals. The White House has directed teams from the CDC, EPA, and FEMA to visit East Palestine homes, starting today, on Saturday. The walk teams will check in on residents, see how they're doing and what they need, connect them with federal and nonprofit resources as locals still reel from the derailment fallout. Now, I mean, obviously, this is just a response. This is a political response from the administration because of the fact that Trump went ahead and embarrassed the crap out of him by going, which I'll be honest, doesn't really surprise me any. So yeah. All right. He asked by reporters on the south lawn of the White House yesterday whether he personally planned to visit East Palestine. The president said, "This time I'm not." Biden said he had done a long meeting with his team on Zoom to get an update on the response. "We were there 2 hours after the train went down," Biden said. "I've spoken with every single major figure in both Pennsylvania and Ohio. So the idea that we're not engaged is simply not there." Okay, I want to point this out. When he says the phrase "simply not there," okay, chances are that is a lie. And in fact, Ohio, Governor DeWine apparently didn't know about this conversation, didn't know about the government showing up and being on site, et cetera, et cetera. And I just don't know. I don't understand where this guy gets off. I mean, his own Secretary of Transportation totally ignored the fact that there was even a problem until people started calling him out on it. And especially the press who were following him on his supposed, personal time, and that kind of stuff. So there isn't even the mayor. I mean, the mayor of the city of East Palestine or Palestine. I can't remember which way it's supposed to be pronounced. I think it's Palestine, but, or maybe it's Palestine. I don't know. God. Anyway, the point being is, even the mayor was questioning when they were going to get federal government assistance and aid. So how Biden can sit here now after the fact saying, "Oh, we were there hours after it happened." No, you weren't. No, you weren't. Just like the whole thing about that you guys put out there about, Donald Trump being to blame because he rescinded break orders when when the NTSB chairperson basically said, "No, that's not true. This particular train wouldn't have even had those brakes on had there even been, had he even not rescinded it." That's all been proven to be false. So, I mean, you can't trust this guy. Everything he says is a lie. His entire career has been built on lies and plagiarism. So the moment his lips start moving, you just automatically know he lies. But he also has a bunch of tells. I'd love to play poker with this guy because, oh my gosh, he has so many verbal tells. It's not even funny. I could take him for all kinds of money, I'm sure. But anyway, so yeah, so that's kind of the big thing. And this report came out today from Daily Wire, which this should be no surprise to anybody, honestly. The East Palestine residents could see long-term health risks from highly toxic chemicals, an analysis said. And let's see. So this was done by researchers at from Texas A&M University and Carnegie Mellon University. They said it on Friday that the residents could be affected by all of this stuff with the ground penetration of the chemical, the air, and the water leaching into it. And they're basically saying that they could have health complications as a result of prolonged exposure to toxic substances, despite officials' assurances that the air and water in the town is safe. Now, the funny thing about that is that the air and water of the town is safe. There was a picture running around on the internet of some of these people standing in a room, and they were, holding up glasses that were supposedly taken from the tap. Now, the funny thing about it was, in some eagle-eyed people, I mean, if you're going to do this, if you're going to post a picture like this, you'd better check it over. And I'm not saying that this is the case, but it seemed kind of interesting that down in the lower left-hand corner of that picture, and some eagle-eyed people actually picked this out, there was a sliver, an edge, probably about a third, of a smart water bottle that was in the photo. Now, keep in mind, I am not alleging anything other than if you're going to do something like that to try and prove to people that things are okay, just make sure you have all of the water bottles and everything else out of the way before you go and post the photo. That's, even if it's true, whether it's true or whether it's not, you are creating the illusion of a conspiracy if you're not accurate with the way that you're dealing with those photos. So yeah, it's just, and I've seen it running around, and it was just really interesting for it. So anyway, local and state authorities previously evacuated all the residents within 1 mile of the February 3rd derailment and started a controlled burn of industrial chemicals on the vehicle to decrease the risk of an explosion, which could have sent shrapnel throughout the small town. Vinyl chloride, a known human carcinogen used to manufacture PVC, was emitted from the 5 train cars in the form of massive plumes of black smoke visible throughout eastern Ohio and western Pennsylvania. The researchers from Texas A&M and Carnegie Mellon said on Friday that 9 of the approximately 50 chemicals that the EPA said were present on the derailed train have higher concentrations than normal in East Palestine. They were especially concerned with the above normal levels of acrolein, acrolein, a substance with a pungent odor that is highly toxic when inhaled, according to a report from the CDC. Other chemicals charted at abnormally high levels, including benzene, naphthalene, and vinyl chloride. If these levels continue, there may be a health concern, the analysis said. Findings came after the EPA said that the test results from the village's municipal well sampling showed no water quality concerns, while Governor Mike DeWine announced that tests conducted by the Ohio EPA revealed no detection of contaminants in the raw water from the 5 wells that feed into East Palestine's municipal water system. Governor Josh Shapiro of Pennsylvania likewise remarked in a recent interview that tests of municipal water supplies and wells have not shown any concerning readings of hazardous chemicals. All right. Well, the fact of the matter is, just like with the COVID vaccine, this is going to be one of those longevity kind of things that we're going to have to keep an eye on for, the length of time, for a long period of time before we actually find out some of the situation, some of the bad effects or ill effects of what happened in East Palestine and the crash. So anyway, okay. So on Biden's refusal to go, let me just point this out. I'm of the camp where if you're not going for a specific purpose and the only reason for you to go is to obtain a photo opportunity, okay, a photo op, then don't just go. Just don't go. And so in that respect, I'm going to be honest with you. I can't see, Biden could barely walk up a flight of stairs to get into Air Force One. So what in the hell is he going to do in East Palestine, Ohio? That being said, I totally agree. He should not go because unless you have been in areas where you've seen this, his visit, because he is a dignitary and all of the security things that they do, they disrupt traffic. They disrupt all kinds of stuff whenever the guy is in town. We here in the Seattle area, when I was down in that way, down in the Seattle area, Air Force One's arrival disrupted SeaTac Airport because Air Force One landed at Boeing Field, which is close by SeaTac. And of course, no other civilian aircraft could be within, a certain distance of Air Force One. He drove through downtown and on I-5 during basically just before and during rush hour. And so it became a bit of a mess because of the fact that they were holding back traffic and things like that. So, as much as people would love to see the president show up, him and all of his entourage and the Secret Service and all of the protection details and everything else. Again, if he's going there to actually do something physically for the town, great, go. But if all you're doing is going there for a photo op, not my cup of tea. Literally cup of And so I wouldn't be interested in him going there. I mean, realistically, let's be honest, he's not going to do anything. So anyway, all right. Okay. All right. Sorry about that. All right. So, next thing on the docket for tonight. What can I say about this grand jury for person, I guess? What were these people thinking? I mean, honestly, where did the prosecutor get the idea that it would be acceptable for a 4-person on a grand jury on a highly publicized event that yeah, anyway, so I'm sorry, let me just go ahead and bring this up. All right, so I guess CNN, MSNBC, a whole bunch of the news media outlets, they went ahead and had this person on and interviewed her. And she, of course, sometimes she would say things like, well, I can't really talk about that, but, and she'd, give a little clue out. Well, here's the thing. She's 30 years old. 30-year-old Emily Kors made national headlines for her giddy comments about the Trump criminal probe. Now take a look at this picture. I mean, look at this. This woman, honestly, is ecstatic about being on TV. She is just lapping this up. She's getting her 15 minutes of fame. And, honestly, I think, and if I were the prosecutor, I would just be furious because of the fact that some of the things that she stated could be construed as jury tampering. And honestly, if you really want to catch Trump in doing something like this, you definitely would not allow anyone to talk to the jury before the indictments or anything else are handed down. It's just, I mean, gosh, I can't even imagine this, because she was talking about the possible indictments and she was hinting at like major list of people. You don't want that to be sent out. I mean, seriously, you don't want that to be released before these people get arrested. This could set up, I'm not saying it will, I'm not a legal analyst, but I can say that with fair certainty that this could set up for a mistrial or an acquittal, or not taking him to trial because of this person's ineptitude in the job that they were doing. Honestly, she handed Trump the win. Realistically, I personally think so. We'll just have to see what's going on. But clips of her sit downs. Now take a look. I mean, here's another picture of her not laughing that much, but clips from her sit-downs on CNN and NBC quickly went viral, particularly for her bizarre enthusiasm and giggly demeanor, something that even Trump foes fear could aid his defense team's effort to dismiss the case entirely. They should. Just dismiss it. Dismiss it, because this is nuts. She never should have been identified. She never should have been on the news. Not until after the indictments had been, publicized and that kind of stuff, honestly. I mean, anyway. So I guess Cooper, there's CNN's Kate Boudin or Boudin or however on Tuesday, and her colleagues Anderson Cooper and Ellie Honig reacted like this. So here's Cooper's statement. First of all, why is this person talking on TV? I do not understand. She's clearly enjoying herself, but I mean, is this responsible? She was the 4-person of this grand jury. Honig said, this is a horrible idea, and I guarantee you that prosecutors are wincing watching her go on this. And Honig is the CNN legal analyst, by the way. Cooper responds back, and I was wincing just watching her eagerness to hint at stuff. There is no reason for her to be out talking. And Honig says back to Anderson Cooper, no, it's a prosecutor's nightmare. Mark my words, Donald Trump's team is going to make a motion if there is an indictment to dismiss that indictment based on grand jury impropriety. Maggie Haberman, who is a CNN political analyst, offered a similar sentiment on CNN this morning. Her quote says, "If I'm the prosecutor, I'm not sure that I want this media tour taking place because I'm confident that Donald Trump's lawyers are going to use this just based on what I was hearing last night from people to try and argue that this is prejudicial in terms of what she is saying," said Haberman. And all of this is true. I mean, all of this is true. She just is, this was entirely improper for this to happen. But you know what? Good on you. Good on you, Georgia prosecutor. You know, good on you for doing that, because you've given Trump an out. Not saying that I want Trump indicted, but seriously, I mean, let's be honest. This guy, there's a reason why they call him Teflon Don, honestly. I mean, everything they throw at him and nothing sticks. Not like I'm looking for anything to stick, but I mean, damn, half the time they're screwing up their own damn cases. Again, Ron White, you can't fix stupid. I know I'm taking a lot of drinks tonight. You gotta give me a little bit here, because you know I'm feeling my throat. All right. Okay. So, let's go on to the next story. And this one is a particular doozy. Okay. So if you recall, the left has been after Ron DeSantis for his conservative viewpoints on several things. One of them happens to be things like sex education in schools. The bill, which was dubbed by the left as "Don't Say Gay," which was not at all any part of the bill, had any of that in it. But they went ahead and did that because it got people's attention and it created sensationalism and all of this stuff. But if any of these people would bother to read these bills before they go and say anything. I know. Nancy Pelosi said you got to pass the bill before you can read what's in it or find out what's in it. Okay. Yeah. Anyway, the point being is that this guy, Ron DeSantis, is the super governor of the country right now. He is far outdistancing just about every other governor in this country. You know, even Kristi Noem, who gained fame for South Dakota following, and Greg Abbott in Texas for following some of Ron DeSantis's lead. But this guy, honestly, he is just smashing all of the left's ideas. He's taking care of their abilities to do things in Florida. And he's turning Florida into essentially what the United States as a whole should be, in my opinion. But his latest thing that he has is he has a law that is essentially working on getting rid of the whole CRT curriculum in the schools. And of course, for those that don't know, CRT is the 1619 Project, Ibram X. Kendi pet project to try and instill what I would consider as more of a reverse racism in our schools, making white kids shamed for the fact that they're white just because they live in America and because of the fact that slavery happened 200 years ago. Okay, this just follows right along with the whole idea that, you know, reparations are needed when nobody who is alive right now has ever been a slave, and nobody who is alive right now has ever been a slave owner. So anyway, the point being is that these people are just going after him left and right. Well, MRC Newsbusters went ahead and came up with this article. And it basically did a look. They took a deep look into the actual law and, basically dug into the law like these journalists are supposed to do. And they don't. And so they, the left just really doesn't look anything other than surface level. They take a tagline and they love it and they think that's it. When in actuality, when you start digging into the actual info, it's not at all the case. But anyway, MRC Newsbusters went ahead and did this. And if you basically, the article says this: if you only got your news from liberal hosts like Don Lemon, Joy Reid, Stephanie Ruhle, you'd think Republicans, particularly Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, were completely banning all mentions of Black history. And that's because, again, because of the fact that they're just going after the moronic, sycophantic idiots that are out there in this country. Okay. But a quick search down here in the article, continuing on here, quoting, yet a quick search of the Florida Department of Education's website. Now, this is a public website. Website, something that any of these so-called journalists could have easily done if they didn't have the anti-DeSantis agenda in their minds, shows that even some of the more controversial leaders of the Black Power movement, like Bobby Seale, Huey P. Newton, and H. Rap Brown, are actually part of the curriculum. Wait, they're actually teaching about some of the more controversial leaders of the Black Power movement in our history? Oh my gosh. So they include an excerpt in the article from an actual page from the Social Studies African American History section of the site, listed as, and I'm not even going to bother, there's the numbers in there, assess key figures and organizations in shaping the civil rights movement and the Black Power movement is the description. And here's the excerpt. Examples may include, but are not limited to, the NAACP, National Urban League, SNCC, CORE, James Farmer, Charles Houston, Thurgood Marshall, Rosa Parks, Constance Baker Motley, the Little Rock Nine, Roy Wilkins, Whitney M. Young, A. Philip Randolph, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Robert F. Williams, Fannie Lou Hamer, Malcolm X, Stokely Carmichael, H. Rap Brown, the Black Panther Party. So notice that first part of the line. Examples may include, but are not limited to. And then they go ahead and put out the list. So they're basically saying that as long as you teach true American history, okay, true American history, which is Black history, it's good, it's bad, that's fine, but you've got to teach it on the correct scale and angle. That's what this is all about. And they went ahead and listed out a bunch of the examples. So again, the left's narrative is completely false. Once again, they are caught in a lie. And yeah, this is just, now I don't know if anybody's actually ever listened to like Joy Reid, in particular, and Don Lemon, but those people realistically are very, they're very racist. Even Whoopi Goldberg, we know is an anti-Semite, but she also is racist as well. And, Joy Reid just can't even hide it. I don't even know how Joy Reid has a show anymore, to be honest with you. But anyway, I digress. All right. So once again, going after Ron DeSantis for at least that is realistically very, very stupid. Very stupid. All right. So. So the whole thing on the Hunter Biden laptop and everything that is going on with the Hunter Biden, or I should say the Biden crime family, Biden Inc., is starting to unravel a little bit. And in particular, we're seeing some things that indicate a potential, like that FBI agent that was indicted and having connections through Hunter Biden into like Albania and things like that. We're starting to see some information that is potentially coming from an insider. And I talked about this a little bit on Wednesday about a key Hunter Biden associate who is cooperating with Congress. Let me go ahead and bring this up. And this is coming from the article in Just the News. A key Hunter Biden associate cooperating with Congress, opening a crucial window into Joe Biden's dealings. Former Rosemont Seneca businessman Eric Schwerin, Sherwin, Schwerin, I don't even know how it's pronounced, is going to be a very valuable witness, according to House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer, who told Just the News that. And anyway, Comer says that he is cooperating with us, and he revealed this Thursday evening on the Just the News No Noise television show. His attorneys and my counsel are communicating on a regular basis. Now I feel confident that he is going to work with us and provide us with information that we have requested. Comer added, I think Sherwin is going to be a very valuable witness for us in this investigation. So it's starting to unwind. The Biden Crime Inc. is starting to unwind a little bit. The article continues on here and says, the announcement comes as the committee has gotten word that Hunter Biden and his uncle, presidential brother James Biden, do not intend to volunteer all of the information that Comer's committee is seeking in its wide-ranging probe for the first family's overseas business dealings that collected millions from Ukraine and China, and possibly Albania as well. Got to throw that in there. All right. Comer said his committee won't wait any longer and will be issuing subpoenas immediately. So if you recall, when I was talking about this last, it was basically Comer said that they didn't want to have to issue subpoenas, but they would if Hunter Biden didn't make his deadline. Apparently he didn't make his midnight deadline on Wednesday. So there you go. And so we know individuals. So Comer continues and says, we know individuals. Many are cooperating with us now, but others not so much. We're going to start subpoenaing people in the private sector, and we're going to start subpoenaing financial institutions to get the information, and then we'll go from there. Now, if you've been listening to like Dan Bongino, for an example, there were several filings on Hunter Biden and James Biden's financial transactions by banks as suspicious activity reports, or SARs. And these essentially are reports that banks are required to file if something doesn't look right as a part of the transaction. And it wasn't just one, it wasn't just two, it was several that have done this. So, give it some time, and I think we're going to find some things out. Now, again, I'm going to reiterate, as I have before, I don't necessarily think this is going to lead anywhere. However, sometimes the process is what we have to go through in order to actually get the meat on the bone for the situation of this. Okay. So yeah. So anyway, so that's the latest kind of thing in the Hunter Biden scandal. Now, Just the News also brought out this article where apparently there's an email chain. God, I bet there's so many people in the freaking Washington, D.C. that are just like deleting their emails as much as they think they can. They're just like, delete emails. And emails, especially if you're using public servers and servers that you do not control, once it's out there, it's kind of like the internet. Once it's out there, it is incredibly difficult to get rid of. That's all I'm going to say. But anyway, apparently there are there are some emails out here. And from the article here, it says contemporaneous emails gleaned from the laptop, so Hunter Biden's laptop, show how Sherwin, however you pronounce it, handled some tax matters for both the future president and his son, engaging in conversations about everything from Joe Biden's private earnings potential to his son's unpaid taxes. He also witnessed discussions around some of the family's most controversial overseas business dealings, ranging from Hunter Biden's remuneration from the Burisma Holdings natural gas firm in Ukraine and a plan to make money off of the name of a Russian oligarch in dealings with CEFC energy firm in communist China. Now, if you recall, or if you've been watching the Dan Bongino breakdown of all of this, is the fact that this is this again, the Russian oligarch, the connection to Hunter Biden, the business in Ukraine, and all of this stuff is just tied together. And each time we get another little snippet coming from somewhere else, it just confirms what's been going on with this entire situation. Okay. And so this is just incredible. Honestly. So yeah, again, this Sherwin's, whatever his name is cooperating. And now he's starting to, there's some other things that are coming on. That's part of the reason why they wanted to talk to him, because he showed up in Hunter Biden's laptop emails. Case in point, if you ever want to do dirty dealings and business dealings, do not let those that are closest to you get high and drop off a laptop and forget about it. I'm sorry. There's a reason why they're crooks and not upstanding citizens, because they're basically stupid. They eventually will get caught. So I don't know where this is going to go. Again, it's probably not going to go much of anywhere, but the more information that we find out about it, the better. So let's just continue along with this. Okay. So let's take a shift. We're going to shift gears here, and we're going to go back into our wonderful economy. And the reason being is because Biden, and I'll talk about this in just a minute, but Biden apparently now is talking about how families have more money in their pockets due to the inflation numbers that came out for the last month in January and December, or the last quarter, I should say. Yeah, I've talked about this at length. I'm still going to talk about this because, again, Joe Biden is lying. He's manipulating numbers. He's trying to make people think that things are going better. Let me ask this sort of a rhetorical question. But for those of you who actually pay for your own groceries and pay for your own gas and pay for your own consumables in order to live, do you have more money in your pocket right now? Because I know I don't. I mean, I personally am having some challenges with the high prices. I'll be honest with you. I just don't see it. I honestly don't see it. I don't see where this economy is all that great. Well, Biden also just promised Ukraine some more money, which of course is going to add to the deficit, which of course is going to add to the inflation rate. Check this out from the Daily Fetched. Biden admin greenlights another 10 billion. Yes, that's billion, billion. Okay. That's another 10 billion for Ukraine. I see you guys over there on the chat, over here on the Rumble chat. You're trying to mess me up. Well, guess what? You messed me up, but I'm not going to answer your question. Anyway. All right. So he goes ahead and greenlights another 10 billion for Ukraine, which of course is going to go directly to our deficit because we don't have that kind of money. And that, of course, in turn means that our interest, or not our insurance, not our interest rate, inflation rate is going to go up. It's going to go up. Now, Biden claims, and this is the article, so Biden claims that families have a little bit more breathing room after another dismal inflation report. Now, the funny thing about this is the numbers were actually revised. Okay. And again, why anybody wants to listen to this guy? I mean, all you have to do is go back in time and you'll see all of the lies and the filth that he has spilled over his 40 years or 30 years in the freaking Senate. And then, being pretty much wrong on just about anything during his term as VP. Why anyone would have trusted him to put him into the freaking White House is totally beyond me. Okay. Totally beyond me. But, I'm just going to say that his touting, and I've again, Twitter, kind of love it. But Twitter, the White House and the press secretary and even his intern that is tweeting for him, because believe me, the sentences are way too coherent for him to be doing it. But even all of those people are have been touting and pushing. The economy is great. The economy is great. The economy is, we've got more jobs. We've got more jobs, so on and so forth. And I've shown you on this program exactly what's going on with all of the jobs reports. Well, there was a challenge here. And the fact that they were talking about the U.S. economy growing. Now, one of the things you've got to understand in terms of the economic values, that are going out there is the fact that we have numbers that get revised after certain other economic indicators come in. And in this particular case, check out this Breitbart article. The U.S. economy actually grew at a slower pace than previously thought in the fourth quarter of last year. And the U.S. economic growth was weaker and inflation was stronger than previously estimated in the fourth quarter of last year. They revised the government data, and now we have the reality of what's going on here. The economy grew at an annual inflation-adjusted pace of 2.7% in the October through December period, according to the Commerce Department's second estimate of gross domestic product, or GDP. The previous estimate had the economy growing at almost 3% at 2.9. The downward revision was driven by a sizable downshift in the estimate of consumer spending. Originally, it was estimated at growing a 2.1% annual rate, and the new estimate has consumer spending growing at just 1.4%. Gee, I wonder why people who don't have the money to spend on frivolous items stop spending it on frivolous items. Pretty freaking amazing, right? Right? Anyway. All right. It also says here in the piece, the slowdown in spending may reflect changes in end-of-year spending habits by U.S. households. Holiday shopping has shifted to earlier in the year. Okay. With many consumers buying holiday gifts as early as September, which falls in the third quarter. Consumer spending, however, may already be regaining steam. This is maybe, we don't know. Retail sales in January came in above expectations, and the labor market indicators have been extraordinarily strong, with jobless claims running at historically low levels, job openings expanding to 11 million. Remember, that's regaining jobs. That's not like new jobs. Those are not net new. Those are regaining. And anyway, unemployment falling to its lowest levels, I said, and payrolls expanding by a blistering hot 500,000 in January. Inflation accelerated in January after a reprieve in November and December. So in other words, inflation went up. Even though all of those other indicators went up, inflation also went up. We want inflation to go down, folks. We don't want inflation to go up. Anyway, also another key indicator. So the key Fed inflation measure rose 0.6% in January, which was more than expected. So again, this guy he just freaking, I don't understand it. And even Biden's own people, if he would ever actually listen, even Biden's own people are talking about it. A former Obama economist says little, if any, progress has been made on inflation under Biden. The consumer price index rose to 6.4 in January. So again, even his own people are starting to I just wish this guy would quit. I mean, I don't understand it. I really don't. And it's not only that, but you also have major businesses. I mean, I don't know if anybody heard, but NPR laid off 10% of its workforce. Now, granted, that wasn't a whole hell of a lot of people because they really don't have a whole hell of a lot of people working for them. But it's still, they're being laid off. People are being laid off. And Walmart itself, Walmart executives from the Epoch Times, Walmart executives admit food inflation remains most stubborn. And they wonder why. Yeah. So again, our economy realistically is not the greatest. I don't care how much Joe Biden wants to sugarcoat it. It's just not. It's not happening. It really is not happening. Okay. Let me see what I've got left here. All right. So I don't know if anybody paid attention, but has anybody ever seen, well, of course you have, you've probably seen it. Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Okay. Not the darker Johnny Depp movie, but the original one. And actually the book itself, even though the Johnny Depp movie was supposed to be a little bit more, true to the book than the Gene Wilder version. But still the point being is the children's books. I mean, those that are out there, these are things that we identify with. And there are times where, we just want to remember those without having, the whole woke people get involved. Well, unfortunately, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Matilda, publisher of the writer, Roald, Roald, Roald Dahl, who's the original author, okay, who wrote Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Matilda, James and the Giant Peach, the BFG, among a bunch of other works, has collaborated with the Roald Dahl Story Company, which manages the works, and they wanted to include, they had worked out to include inclusive, they had worked with Inclusive Minds, which monitors children's literature for inclusion, diversity, and accessibility. And they wanted to make some changes in the books. Salman Rushdie tweeted about it. Roald Dahl was no angel, but this is absurd censorship. Puffin Books and the Dahl estate should be ashamed. And basically what they were going to do was that they were going to change words like fat. And so here's an example of one of the changes in the twits. The quote is, "Have you ever seen a woman with an uglier face than that?" Which would have become, "Have you ever seen anyone with an uglier face than that?" They obviously replaced the word woman with anyone. And they changed words like, "Oh, do shut up, you old hag," which became, "Oh, do shut up, you old crow." In the Witches, the book The Witches, the following sentences were removed. I do not wish to speak badly about women. Most women are lovely. Obviously, they're going after, the whole woman and everything else. They were going and making these changes, these slight changes to the verbiage. And so here's the one in the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. And this sentence was entirely removed. Mike TV himself had no less than 18 toy pistols of various sizes hanging from belts around his body, and every now and again he would leap up into the air and fire off a half dozen rounds from one or another of these weapons. Another sentence in the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory that was also supposedly removed is the Oompa Loompas spent every moment of their days climbing through the treetops. Yeah, so that's something that they were looking to do. Now, the funny thing about it is we're actually hitting back, folks. I wanted to leave you this because we're actually hitting back. And this came out in the Daily Wire that apparently the publisher decides to walk back the woke rewrites of the classic stories. And instead of just usurping the original text, and this is a partial win, let's just be honest, this is a partial win, but they will release the original text as well as the rewritten other stories. So they'll keep the original text and they will essentially give parents the choice to either buy the original or get the new woke watered down version. So yeah. What a wonderful world we live in. Really? Okay. So I have some other ones. I highly encourage you to go and look in the description on the videos, both on YouTube and on Rumble, and look at some of the other articles that I've got running around in there. There's a few other articles in there. But I really, really, really want to get to my question for whiskey once I can find it. There it is. All right. And as I said in my opening monologue, the question for whiskey comes from Outlaw Dogs out on Rumble. And Outlaw Dogs writes and says, "Hi, Whiskey. I have heard of color revolution, but would like more of an explanation of what it is. Why does the U.S. do it? And did they happen to run one on Donald John Trump?" She says, thanks. And by the way, the moccasins who she coaches apparently cleaned up at districts. Well, cleaned up quite well. They had several high place finishes and things like that. She DM'd me in Twitter the whole list, but I don't want to go through and read through all of them. But they had a tremendous and incredible season. So the Delaware Valley Water Moccasins swim team, congratulations to all of you for what you guys and gals have done. So that's awesome. All right. So what is a colored revolution? Well, that terminology actually harkens back to the old Soviet Union days, as well as the some of the revolutions that occurred in where is it? I want to get this right. Some of the other Soviet Union places and things like that, but there's also one, I think it was Grenada. I can't seem to find it right now. But basically the definition of the term color revolution essentially references any various related revolutionary movements that developed in several societies in the former, it's the Balkans, sorry, not Grenada, the Balkans, developed in several societies in the former Soviet Union and the Balkans during the early 2000s, mostly using nonviolent resistance. And that's the key right there, is the non-violent resistance, okay? So essentially what a color revolution is a methodology to honestly push a oppressive regime and a totalitarian government through grabbing entities like non-government organizations and essentially usurping other protesting organizations, things that, for an example, like usurping, say, BLM, usurping Antifa or something like that, and pushing toward a more democratic type of government rather than a totalitarian regime. It is for the most part, a singularly U.S. tactic. And the reason for it, honestly, is to avoid going to war. Okay? It's to avoid having to shoot and bomb and everything else in order to get rid of totalitarian regimes. Now, there's a few things that have to be in place or basically active in order to effectively enact a color revolution. And just because you enact a color revolution doesn't necessarily mean that you are going to get a full democracy on the other end. Generally speaking, you'll end up with what is considered to be a more democratic government than what used to be there. Okay, but it doesn't mean that it goes like all full-on democracy like the U.S. So you'll have, generally speaking, a mixture of what the former political situation was. For an example, let's just look at Ukraine. Ukraine used to be under the Soviet Union. When they broke apart, Ukraine had a color revolution, and they now have more of a democratic type of government, but it's not quite entirely democratic. And so that's essentially kind of what's going on with the whole idea of a color revolution. And the U.S. has been doing this consistently across the globe. We really have been pushing these kinds of things. So one of the things that you do is you don't launch military operations. So that's the first thing, is that you're not going to go literally militarily head to head and topple the regime. But generally speaking, what you'll do is you'll have a regime that is, and I'm sorry, I'm looking up my research here, but you'll have a regime that essentially has, I got to find it here. Well, essentially what they'll have is they'll have a dictator who is kind of like a lame duck president. Okay. He's already well unliked, much like Biden. He's already, just is essentially ready to leave office. And so what you do is you insert ideas, you insert maybe some people who help out the revolutionists who are looking to change the type of government that is there. And you go after someone who is weak, and you essentially usurp them by enlisting, non-government organizations, activist groups, try and glom on to certain causes, and you're pushing things, pushing the government more from a ideological standpoint from the people rather than all out war. And this has been, like I said, this has been going on for quite some time, but the term really made its existence in the early 2000s from it. Now, whether or not a color revolution was enacted on Donald Trump, realistically, I actually think we're kind of in one right now. And the reason being is because of the fact that we have essentially a weak leader who is probably not going to get elected a second term due to his age. And there are plenty of non-government organizations like Antifa, for an example, BLM, some of the other ones that are around there, that have been pushing to try and get rid of, in our case, the Constitution. Another criteria that is used in a color revolution is that anti-regime forces are enforced by the mass media and foreign influencers. So if you think about what's going on in America today, we have the mass media, CNN, MSNBC, even so far as to go to like Fox News as an example. They're all kind of on board with this, and they do a lot of things where they are in bed with the government, or not with the government itself, but the actors inside the government that are attempting to overthrow things. If you look at things like the FBI as an example, the FBI going after conservatives and going after Christians and going after typical Americans, you could consider that a part of a color revolution. Okay. Let's see. The third criteria that is usually indicative is that the revolution itself, it's not necessarily ideological per se, but it's more for freedom, democracy. That's a typical thing. Now, in this particular case, the one that we're potentially going through right now, is that it's actually going the opposite direction. We're actually going more toward communism and totalitarianism. So this isn't the typical color revolution that the U.S. would be employing. However, the tactics are not that far off from what we would use. Okay. And the last piece that is typically shown in a color revolution is that the anti-regime forces are motivated by grievances on the corrupted government, which is supported by, a foreign state or that people do not desire. So in this particular case, I don't know where the foreign state necessarily would come from, although I can tell you that somebody like George Soros. So in this particular case, we're not actually being usurped by another government. We're potentially being usurped by a very large conglomeration who is looking at possibly, a new world order. And they have to get rid of America in order to accomplish their goals. Now, I'm not saying that this is necessarily happening, okay, right now. However, I can tell you that there are certain signs and symptoms that are very similar to tactics that we would use in terms of America, that we would use in a color revolutionary kind of scenario. And again, it was originally used by the U.S., just to kind of reiterate, it was originally used by the U.S. against totalitarian regimes. And so, yeah, just kind of there's a little bit of a similarity between what we're dealing with today and the color revolution tactics that we've employed in the past. All right. Hopefully that answered your question. If you'd like to send a question for Whiskey in, please do so at fans@whiskeymusings.online. That's FANS, or phonetically spelled, Foxtrot Alpha November Sierra at whiskeymusings.online. You can send me a question for Whiskey for Saturday night. You can also use that email to send me a pet of the week. And I think I've got a couple in the queue right now. But obviously send them in. The pet of the weeks I usually queue up when based on, first in, first out kind of process. But the questions for Whiskey, if I get a couple of questions and one of them looks a little more intriguing than the other, I might swap them out. But anyway, so send me a question for Whiskey or a pet of the week, and I'll get them on the air. And that is my final Whiskey Musings thought for the evening. Do me a favor, if you like what I do, you like the show, and you like what I do, please head on over to Rumble, find my channel, Whiskey Musings Broadcast, sign up for a Rumble account, and subscribe. I'm trying to get to 10,000 subscribers by the end of 2023. Huge goal, and I'm suffering greatly. Right now, I'm only at 491. Got a long way to go. So do me a favor, send me, go over there and sign up. Subscriptions are what matters, not necessarily views, but subscriptions are what matters. It will help me do things like possibly expanding the show to 5 days a week instead of just on Wednesdays and Saturdays, just as a case in point. All right. Have a great weekend, all of you, and we'll see you next time on the Whiskey Musings broadcast. Good night, everybody.